Hey guys, so as you know, we're going to be reading The Great Gatsby for the next few weeks, but first I really wanted to take you through the history of the 20s because I think you can really see this in this novel. So today we're going to cover four main areas. We're going to cover the New Woman, Jazz Age, and Prohibition, and racism. I think that those are very important, and I think that there's more that we could talk about, but I think that these are the main ones that you can see throughout the book. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the New Woman. Now the New Woman pretty much just embodies the idea that women didn't have to stay at home with the children all the time, that they could actually go out and be a little bit more of members of the society per se. Flappers are a very popular symbol from the 1920s. These would be women that wore very short skirts, they drank a lot, they cursed, they pretty much just did very unladylike things, which is definitely not what the women of the 1920s actually did. Now the 19th Amendment is something that is very important. It was passed in 1920, and this gave women the right to vote. So as you can see, there are a lot more freedoms popping up for women during this time period. And again, during this period, women began to work these white-collar jobs. They weren't expected to be the housewife anymore. They were actually allowed to go out into the businesses and go out into factories and work those kinds of jobs as well. So now we're going to talk about the Jazz Age. So this is just a period of time where both jazz music and jazz dancing became very popular with the younger generation. Now, because of the increased automobile sales during this time, people could go wherever they wanted to, and most people chose to go out dancing because it was just a way to relieve stress during this time. And so jazz dancing became very popular. Moves such as the Charleston also became very popular. During this time, jazz bands also became very popular, and they started to emerge all over the place in clubs such as the Savoy in New York City, and just a lot of different big cities began to allow jazz bands to come and play at their clubs. Now, listening to the radio was also something that became popular during this time, and jazz music was played a bunch, and the older generation actually found this music to be very vulgar, while the younger generation really loved the freedom that it allowed to move your body freely. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Prohibition. So this is the period of time in which alcohol was actually banned all over the country. So the 18th Amendment was ratified in 1919, and this basically prohibited the selling and production of large quantities of alcohol. Now, because of this, the selling of alcohol became kind of an underground business, and speakeasies replaced bars and taverns, and these speakeasies were usually ran by gang members or people of that sort, and you normally had to know someone to get inside of these speakeasies. A lot of people believed that this prohibition was done in order to fix the unruly immigrants that began moving to these big cities, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the upcoming slides. Okay, so now we're going to talk about racism in the 1920s, and this is something that is embodied in the character of Tom in The Great Gatsby, so I really want you to watch out for that character. Now, the Great Migration was a period of time in which a lot of African Americans from small southern cities began moving into the big cities and kind of taking over these cities like New York or Chicago or Boston, places like that. Now, because of the Great Migration, Black culture became very popular in these big cities, and this is why Jazz Age happened, and this is why blues music and the Harlem Renaissance happened as well. During this time period, a lot of white Americans in the South began joining the Ku Klux Klan because they believed that the Klan kind of embodied returning to more traditional values in America, which was definitely not true. Now, this idea may not have a lot to do with history, but I really did want you guys to think about the American dream. Now, this is the idea that you can start from the bottom and really work your way up in America and do whatever job you want. So I really want you to keep that in mind as you're reading this novel. So now I want you guys to start thinking about your final project. I will be sending out a typed rubric, but I want you guys to be thinking about which one of these four historical subjects would you relate to any of the characters in the book. Now, I know we haven't read it yet, but just keep that in the back of your mind as you are reading this.